Yeah, well, speaking of Twitterverse and Twitter world, left Twitter, whatever you want to call it, I did want to get into some quote unquote breaking news. Whatever the most recent kick in the balls that's been handed to us by the Biden administration. I'm sure you know what's coming. Neera Tanden of the Center for American Progress, was nominated, or I guess is going to be the director of the Office of OMB, Office of Management and Budget. I just wanted to get your reaction to that.
Yeah, I mean, could you be more insulting? I mean, if I had two dicks, I'd be kicked in both my dicks by that move. I mean, come on. This is a lobbyist, essentially. She's the modern day lobbyist. She was created, CAP was created to take money from corporations to push ideology and legislation that undermine progressive policy.
And for people who don't know, Center for American Progress was founded by John Podesta, famously of the Podesta emails, as chair of the Hillary Clinton campaign.
Right. It was a wing of basically Hillary Clinton's, and it was to create narratives and the actual policy, but to appear a little bit progressive, like sort of a compromise to progressives that would be tenable. But basically, they were funded by a lot of groups that didn't want progressive legislation. They always have been. Originally, the SAE funded a lot of stuff. The PG&E is a big funder. There are a lot of dark forces. I mean, not in the Marianne Williamson dark forces way, who I just saw was on your show. That's the only reason that popped into my head. But there are a lot of people that we fight against on the left funded CAP and still do. So they're not an ally. And so for them to pick her, who is a known basically enemy of the left online, along with the whole slew of picks they made today. They also put in the first all-women comms team.
Well, that's exactly the thing, is that they, as part of this broad announcement, they come out and they say, Biden hires all female senior communications team, so, your Yas Queen moment,
Right.
Oh, wait, it's full of people who are warmongers. Neera Tanden, as part of the Podesta emails, we know literally was in favor of going into Libya and stealing their oil because it was there and we could take it. This is the kind of thinking that goes into the Biden cabinet now. This is what they're after.
Right.
As much as the soft left wants to tout that Biden actually resisted Libya personally, he's setting up all of the pieces to go down that way again. Whether it's in Libya or Somalia or some new country that we decide to destroy.
Yeah, absolutely. And what they do. I mean, if you were a Bernie supporter, you became really aware of their techniques back in 2016. One of the beauties of Bernie and progressives, and that he got so much popularity, is you were able to watch the media as his supporter and see how biased they were and how much they pushed these false narratives. And you could only do that if you supported him. I mean, if you didn't have someone you're rooting for and say, "Oh, that's a little unfair. That's nothing like what I read on the internet. That's not fair." But so one of the main techniques they use is identity politics, and identity politics in itself isn't bad. I mean, in theory, it's, Black people need representation, gay people need representation. It's not unvalid to want your identity expressed in policy and, just
someone who shared your experiences to an extent.
Yeah, it's good to have them in government, and that's a good concept. But what the Democratic Party has done is weaponize identity politics. They use it as a weapon. So there's no bigger example of that right now than the comms team they picked. Why is it the comms team of all the groups that is all women? I mean, the public face of Biden is going to be women to shield him from attacks.
Yeah.
Like if you attack Biden, and specifically Simone Sanders, a Black woman who was the Bernie sellout that became Biden's campaign manager, or not campaign manager. What was she? I don't know, she was up there.
Something like that. Yeah, she was.
Advisor.
Yeah.
But,
I know what you're saying.
So you'll have to attack a Black woman, and you will take criticism for anything you wield at Biden on any show that she's on. I mean, that's a potential defense. Like you're just, I mean, we heard it all before. You're racist or sexist for having these beliefs. It's what they do.
Yeah, and of course the irony too is that while they're presenting this super diverse cabinet. When it comes to ideological diversity, there's basically none to be found. Obviously, they're stacking the cabinet full of, as Zach mentioned, all these corporatists and war criminals, but they've snubbed Bernie and Elizabeth Warren, who they pretended would get cabinet nominations up until this point. Pretended like they were really going to try to unify the left by giving Warren the Treasury Secretary and Bernie the Labor Secretary, and all of this fantasy.
Janet Yellen's basically Elizabeth Warren, Gavin.
Yeah, that's what they'd want you to believe. And again, obviously not that Warren, she's obviously burned quite a few bridges herself, but still, it's just crazy the fact that they're basically completely acting like the primary didn't happen, that there is no real split in the Democratic Party, that there is no real ideological difference between two main factions. And now we're, arrived at this cabinet, which is, as you said,
right.
So yeah, I think that's definitely ironic.
And that's why, we have a lot of enemies on the left if you're a progressive, but controlling the media narrative is like the biggest enemy we have. Like, so the first thing they come out and do with all these cabinet appointments is spin all these articles and stories, which then get elevated to the mainstream media, because MSNBC can say, well, the New York Times wrote a story today. So it's just like amplifying it, that this story written by an opinion writer for the New York Times.
Quasi fact checking.
Right. And it's half the time it's a Republican. You got some Republican writing an article about how happy Dems are with the progressive cabinet that Biden picked. And that gets pushed all the way up to MSNBC and CNN and promoted as like, this is what people think. This is what progressives think. Meanwhile, you're not talking to, they never talk to a single progressive in the lot. Yeah. And then they have people like Neera Tanden, who in the book is called Neera Tantrum. But they have her on and they have these people discuss these issues that really are lobbyists. They work for think tanks like Neera Tanden was CAP. That was a think tank. But not once on MSNBC do they ever disclose what she does. They may say CAP, but the general public doesn't know what the hell CAP is. They don't know what Center for American Progress is.
Sounds
they don't
good.
know.
Sounds
they don't
positive.
know that she's a lobbyist, basically. And they don't present them as such. And they do the same thing. Yeah, they do the same thing with people from Raytheon or all these evil. And so you have all these people debating the issue, and especially when they put a panel up. When you have a panel of like 5 people and there isn't a real progressive on it, and it looks like a real debate to the public, yeah. So that, I mean, on the left, that's our biggest problem to me. I mean, if you had a fair media, they can't do what they did in 2020 to Bernie. They can't create a narrative in a week that could sink a campaign.
Right. You're good.
No, I mean, I don't want to live in Bernie land forever. I think we need to get past that. But I think it's important to know what they're capable of, because, we could run the best candidate in the world for presidency within the Democratic Party. And we don't have a means to stop what they can do to the general uninformed or barely informed public. They have a lot of power still. We have things on our side, which is that there's a general distrust of the media. Younger people get less of their news from mainstream media. The country's going socialist. Socialism is way more popular. We have all these things on our side, but going into that last week before North Carolina.
South
Carolina. Yeah. I mean, we were sitting pretty, and they had the power to convince the general public, even people who had Bernie as their second choice, that he was no longer a valid second choice, because he would probably lose the election. And that collective fear mongering with getting all the candidates to drop out, it worked. I mean, and that's the bottom line.